Welcome everyone to today's XTOL webinar on EDI Modernization for JD Edwards applications. This is Jim O'Leary from XTOL, and I'm here with my co-host and our feature presenter today, Ali Janan. Ali heads up our professional and managed services organization and is also an experienced project leader and implementer in his tenure at XTOL. So we're fortunate to have him with us to share his experience with JD Edwards projects. Before we get to Ali's part of the presentation, I want to take a few minutes to establish some basic background on business drivers, EDI technology, and reuse methodologies. And this is material that we've covered in previous XTOL webcasts. I'll be condensing it into about 5 or 10 minutes, so it's a lot of stuff to cover very quickly, but it's important background material in order to understand the importance of what Ali's going to be covering. So let's start by looking at some of the key factors that we hear about from businesses that drive their EDI integration projects. And let me start by defining what we mean by EDI modernization, because that's sort of the context for the implementation topics we'll be covering. Most EDI projects we see today occur in businesses with existing EDI investments, and those may be in the form of in-house EDI operations or subscriptions to external EDI implementation and managed services. Now, sometimes new requirements might surface, or perhaps major problems might occur that can't be handled by the EDI solution in place. And that leads to the decision to augment or even replace the current EDI solution. And that remediation effort that results is what we refer to as modernization. So here are the most common modernization drivers that we see. The first is lost revenue due to missing partner integration capabilities and sometimes poor scorecard ratings. So if there's a partner who has an integration requirement that can't be met with existing software or service, that obviously could have, if you're a supply side business, could have a revenue impact. Second is high order rates in order processing, for example, exception handling, exceptions in EDI processing, and downstream activities like shipping. Outages, processing backlogs, poor visibility that jeopardize compliance. So this has to do with problems that make it difficult for you to detect and address service level issues. Slow onboarding and high cost of adding new partners and making partner changes. That's a frequent complaint with EDI services in particular. Mounting costs for licensing, maintaining, and using multiple integration solutions. We very often see companies using multiple solutions because over time, as new requirements have surfaced, they've added software or services to provide capabilities that were missing from the core EDI solution that was put in place in years previously. And finally, platform migration, application replacement, or upgrades that necessitate EDI integration changes. And that really, I think, is probably the most important driver for many JD Edwards organizations. One of the best opportunities to modernize EDI is during an ERP upgrade or migration project when changes occur to business processes and documents and interfaces. And when those changes affect existing EDI processes or introduce new requirements, it can make sense to replace the current EDI software or service with a more capable alternative. And about 1/3 of current JD Edwards licenses are using unsupported versions of Enterprise One, and that number is even higher for JD Edwards World users. So there's a good chance that some of you might be facing that kind of situation today. Now, opportunities to modernize are rare, so it's important to take advantage of major application and partner side changes to upgrade your EDI capabilities. And let's just talk for a second about the payback of modernization. First of all, I don't mean to suggest that modernization is an easy choice. Adding new software or a new service to your existing environment to meet new requirements adds cost and complexity and risk. And for that reason, modernization frequently means migration or replacement of your existing solution, moving or recreating EDI assets from one or more legacy systems to a modern replacement solution. And the payback on that migration investment can be substantial. So there are a number of reasons or number of benefits that businesses might be looking for in modernization. You can see some of the more common ones on the right-hand side of the scales here. Broader EDI capabilities like the ability to transform and integrate additional document types and partner endpoints. Faster time to value, meaning speeding up design, build, and test activities. Lower error rate due to higher levels of reuse that incorporate EDI best practices. Improved visibility in the form of alerts and better dashboarding capabilities. Lower onboarding costs because of time savings and reduced error incidents. Reduced project risk through error reduction and change management improvements. Software service consolidation in situations where more than one EDI solution can be replaced by a single, more capable solution. And in general, lower total cost of ownership by reducing learning curves, implementation time, error rates, and also the consolidation opportunity I mentioned a minute ago. So with the right technology, methodology, and expertise, the point I want to make, the point we hope to convince you of in today's webinar, is that migration isn't the daunting, costly prospect that it used to be. In fact, it should provide a basis for faster partner onboarding, reduced maintenance costs, and reduced errors. So there are some major benefits that you can realize by taking that step and replacing an older legacy solution that's limited and no longer meets your business needs. Let's move on to a quick level set on the EDI technology environment as a background to the key issues we'll be covering today. Now this diagram shows the main elements of EDI integration with JD Edwards software. And even though most of you are probably familiar with how EDI works with JD Edwards, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. So very quickly at the top we see customers, vendors, other trading partners, and also cloud applications and services that you connect to and exchange EDI and other kinds of electronic documents. And typically those documents are transported in the case of EDI using standard AS2 communications, value-added network services, or secure file transfer. On the right, we see the JD Edwards software itself, which is typically, again, Enterprise 1, but we also see World, One World, and older JD Edwards versions. And EDI modernization is really most pronounced in businesses that are moving from those older versions to Enterprise 1 or older versions of Enterprise 1 to newer ones. But there are other modernization drivers that are unrelated as well to JD Edwards changes. JD Edwards products, all of them expose multiple interfaces for integration, but the key interface for EDI is called the data interface for electronic data interchange. And that interface is supported in some form by all of the JD Edwards products and versions I've mentioned, including older world systems. And it consists of a set of database tables identified using the code prefix F47, which you see in the diagram. And those tables provide a safe supported means to stage EDI input and output data and to pass it in and out of the JD Edwards software without directly modifying live production data. Now the EDI integration middleware at the center is the part that we're going to focus on today. So that provides mediating services like inbound and outbound communications, transformation for EDI and other document types, and integration with JD Edwards and other enterprise applications and data. And those middleware services are always present either on-premise or, in the case of a service, in some hosted or cloud-based environment. So the key question we'll be taking up during this webinar is, what are some of the key success factors for EDI implementation projects that apply to JD Edwards, Enterprise 1, and World? And again, well, our focus today is on JD Edwards, but most of what we'll be covering here applies to other environments just as well. Okay, so the first key is it's important to understand the business domain. So that means understanding the goals of EDI projects, trading partner requirements, business process context, what inbound and outbound data flows are used for, and also to understand the business purpose of EDI documents that are exchanged with your trading partners. Second, obviously you need some understanding of the technology domain as well. So that encompasses EDI mapping fundamentals, how to connect with trading partners, how to connect with application and data resources, and also what kinds of middleware services you have available to implement your integrations. And then we get to the topics or the keys that we'll be focusing more on today. The first is defining a reuse strategy. And there are several sort of sub-elements we'll be getting into. First of all, deciding what you want to reuse and at what levels. Secondly, understanding the importance of templates and using pre-built templates if they're available. And third, applying automation to speed and enforce reuse. And that one may not be obvious, but once we get to Lifecycle, you'll understand what the role of automation is in reuse. The fourth point is to get business buy-in at the project planning stage on the plan itself and the organization and how the project's going to be run, what the goals are, how success is going to be measured, and things like that. So that's something that Ali will be spending some time on. And then finally, aligning implementation methods with your reuse strategy. So I'll be talking here for the next couple of minutes on reuse strategy, and then Ali will pick up on how that reuse strategy is actually carried forward in EDI integration projects. Okay, so let's start by talking about different levels of reuse. So this diagram shows, in concept, a set of integrations that are generalized in the form of templates that can be used to implement integration between trading partners in the upper left and the J.D. Edwards software on the lower right. In this case, we have templates for inbound sales orders, order changes, ship notices, outbound invoices, and so on. And each of those templates includes a set of configured integration objects that work together to implement the transaction process that each template represents. Where does reuse fit into this? Well, first of all, the templates themselves, I'll get to those in a second, but even before we get to templates, you can reuse individual objects. So a common type of reuse is reusing maps, right? If you build a map for one trading partner, another trading partner sends or receives the same document type, you can reuse all or parts of the map that you originally created for the first partner. You can also reuse at the transaction level. So each of these transactions represents a single EDI process, inbound or outbound, and all of the configured objects that are used to implement that process can be reused together. And then third, you can actually look at multiple templates together that implement a set of EDI processes that work together. So the order to cash cycle is a common set of EDI transactions. Procure to pay is another one. There are a number of those sets of EDI transactions that frequently are implemented together for a single trading partner. And it makes sense to reuse at the project level as well if you have an opportunity to do so. The main point of this is to understand that the higher the level of reuse, in other words, object level being the lowest level, EDI process or project level being the highest, productivity goes up as reuse level goes up, and error rates go down as reuse level goes up. So the trade-off you have here is that if you reuse at a low level, you sort of lose a little bit of productivity because some of the built-in structure and best practices of that high level are sacrificed. That takes us to templates. So reuse in general, we understand the importance of reusing at different levels. What are templates? Templates are simply pre-existing objects or integrations or projects that are generalized to the point where they can be used for multiple partner integration instances. And this chart shows an example of the pre-built templates that we provide as part of our J.D. Edwards solution for order to cash and procure to pay processes. I'm not going to get into details here, but the point is that when you build a project, you can select from any of these transactions that you need, build your own project templates from them, and then instantiate projects from those templates. One of the most important things to understand about templates is, yes, they do save you time because you're not building out every bit of each integration that you test and deploy. But more important than saving time is the best practices that get propagated, the fact that you're increasing the quality, improving the quality of the results that you generate from those templates. And that means reduced testing time, it means fewer runtime errors, it means easier, better maintainability, and more consistency in the projects that you create. And one point that I think Ali will be reinforcing in his part of the presentation is you don't necessarily have to have pre-built templates in order to get those benefits. In fact, if you look at the amount of time it saves you in a project to use pre-built templates, generally it's on the order of a couple of % of the project time. And the more trading partners you're integrating in a project, the less time savings you see because proportionally the amount of time you spend building templates is smaller as you integrate more and more partners. So the point is, it's not really time savings that is the big benefit of templates. It's quality, it's consistency, it's enforcement of best practices. That's really the major benefit that you get. Templates enforce best practices in metadata and mapping. For example, if you incorporate maps that split order lines in a particular way or that configure advanced ship notices in a particular way, those practices are enforced in any project that you use that reuses that map. EDI process automation best practices, exception management's a major example here. Our notifications can be incorporated in all of your business processes simply by incorporating a standard notification or exception handling process in your template. Project management best practices include things like consistent object naming and standardized organization of objects within the project. And then finally, there are some best practices that really lie outside the template. They're not really benefits of using templates, but I did want to mention that having the right software or middleware underneath your projects also helps in the form of centralizing configuration management, change management, data movement logging, and other things that are important to both time savings and quality. A big advantage of reuse certainly is time savings, and you can see on the left-hand side of this diagram that if you do no reuse at all, and of course that never happens, but if theoretically you reuse nothing, you'd lose about 75% of your productivity. In other words, it would take 75% longer to complete your project than if you did reuse. You can see if you add manual reuse with pre-built templates, you gain on average for, I think this was scaled for 100 trading partner project, about 3.5%. And again, that percentage goes down as project size increases. But the big takeaway here is if you use automation to enforce reuse, you gain an additional 60% on top of manual reuse practices. And again, Ali will be talking about how this works with our solution, but I think it's really important to recognize that, yes, reuse is important. It gives you major benefits in terms of consistency and quality, but the major speed gain that you get from reuse is from automating it. And we'll talk again in a few minutes about how that works. Okay, so let's put all these factors together before I hand things over to Ali. And again, here's our diagram of the EDI environment. And we've got the design time environment that we want to sort of zoom in on here. And it starts with a repository because that's the basis for reuse. And I'm adding a depiction of our design time environment called EDI Studio at the top. So reuse at the very basic level is supported by modelers and editors that allow you to reuse objects or integrations or projects that have been previously created. And via change management, you can reuse those objects and build additional projects and incorporate them. The next level is to add templates. And again, templates don't necessarily mean pre-built templates. If you don't have any templates pre-built for your particular integration requirements, then building the templates is typically something you do early on in a project so that you can reuse those templates and gain productivity and quality benefits from doing so. If you have the opportunity to use pre-built templates, for example, our Xtoll application integrator for JD Edwards is a template solution for JD Edwards. So we provide pre-built templates, as I mentioned before, for order-to-cash and procure-to-pay processes. And again, the major benefit of that is to incorporate and enforce the use of best practices. And then finally, there's the automation piece, which I've been hinting at but not describing. Ali will get to that in a second, which uses templates to generate project instances that are then customized, tested, and deployed using the rest of the tools in the suite. So that's sort of how all the pieces fit together. And to sort of put this in a project context and talk about the more practical aspects of how this technology can be used, I'll turn it over to Ali.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ali Janan. I am the Director of Technical Services here at Xtoll. I've been with Xtoll for a little over 5 years, and I've worked with the Xtoll EDI product for, I'd say, going on 7 years now. I did a little bit of work with it before I started here. I've been in the industry for a little over 20 years, so I've had my share of projects that I've been involved in, both on the end user side and also on the application side here at Xtoll. I'm going to talk a little bit today about, as Jim mentioned, the reusability and projects and how all of that ties together, how we can get the most out of the work that we're doing in a project. I'm going to talk from a project management perspective. I'm going to talk from the person who's actually building the products and the thought processes that go on there. I'll talk a little bit about a few business case scenarios that we have. One where we started from scratch, where we were doing a JDE implementation, and also one where we used our application integrator for JDE, and kind of show how those two projects, while they are different in that we didn't start with the application integrator on the second business use case, once the project is completed, and the whole thought process in building that is in thinking about reuse, and it's something that we've put together a methodology here at Extol over the last few years that we've really grown to like and have proven that the time that it saves and the ease with which you can onboard new trading partners is really spectacular when it comes to onboarding EDI and doing the project management side of things. So let's talk a little bit just about the project lifecycle. And when we think about a new engagement on the EDI side, we're engaged with a new customer, and whether we're using JDE or any other application that we're integrating with, it could be a homegrown system, it could be any one of the applications that are out there. In general, we try to keep the same mindset, and we go through at a very high level the gathering planning phase, the design and implement phase. Once we go live, we monitor and we manage transactions, and then we have change management and maintaining objects. So if we talk a little bit about those areas, they all kind of go together. The most important pieces of the entire project, as I'm sure you can imagine, gathering information, planning the project, analyzing requirements, and seeing how all of that is going to fit together, and making sure that from the business side of things, that's what the business buy-in is. It's important to understand that when we gather these trading partner specs and this sample data, we're trying to make sure that we're specifying all of the needs of both the trading partner that we're dealing with, as well as the business needs of our customer that we're working with. We want to plan, schedule, staff. We want to make sure that we have the right amount of resources to make this happen. On the design side of things, we need to work with a few different areas, and I try to keep it at a very high level. We're talking about the communication methods that we're communicating with our trading partners. Are they FTP? Are they AS2? How are we going to reuse any kind of communication methods that we have? We have the mapping of transactional data and how we integrate with the back end. When we talk about orders to cash, as Jim mentioned in his slide previously, the 850s through the 810s, you have an order coming in. When we talk about a new project and what type of customer are we going to want to start with for the most bang for our buck with the reusability aspect of the project, you don't want to take your one-off, your mom-and-pop type customer, your mom-and-pop type trading partner. You want to make sure that you're using something that is as much as you can, all-encompassing of the business aspect that you're dealing with. So you would want to have a more difficult trading partner up front. You want to make sure that that's the case, because what that allows you to do is most of that work is done up front, and you're already putting in the time to develop that. Once you have that map, that could be considered what we call a base map, or that reusable transactional map that we're going to use moving forward. And if we have customers that we're then onboarding that don't have all those requirements, we could simply cut out or disable those pieces to the project. Once we go live, we're monitoring the activity. Trading partners may have different requirements that come along. We may have data issues or exceptions that we want to deal with. We're constantly going back and revisiting the base maps so that we're keeping that as a fluid document, and we're using that over and over again. Finally, the change maintenance. Any new trading partners that are come along, new transactions, upgrading. So we're going from 4010 to 4030 or to 5010. That may bring on new base maps that we have for these projects. This slide here gives you a little bit of an idea of how everything is integrated from the previous slide. And when we talk about the time moving from left to right and the tasks top down, we're hitting the same categories that I did in the previous slide between the gathering, the planning section, designing, building, and testing. Those are our tasks as we go down. But if you look at the amount of time or the amount of pieces that are hitting the design phase from the gathering and planning, that's quite a bit. Once we get to that design phase and we move into the building phase, it's a matter of, have we done our due diligence? Have we taken all of the hardware specs, test plan, the trading partner specs, and the test data? Do we have that all in a clear, concise format so that when we hand off to the person that is building this application, this integration, that they can build it, we can test, and then at that point it's just a cycle. Build, test, build, test. Once we're comfortable with that, deploying. The final piece that I want to talk about on this slide is the importance with maintaining. The maintenance plan of this, of any type of project like this, is important to make sure that we're keeping up with all of the trading partner requirements as well as the business requirements. So there's, a business requirement may change. Jim alluded to earlier that there's, the possibility for split lines on warehouse shipments, or, if we have advanced ship notices that are coming in a shipment order pack item type leveling, and now they want to add a tear level to that. So maintaining those base maps are critical to the project. It's also critical to the reusability in moving forward. And if all of that stuff is done properly the first time through, the reusability is just that much easier. This slide shows a little bit in the EDI realm of what we think about when we're talking about the base configuration compared to the deployment. It shows the number of objects that we think about from a base perspective, whether it's inbound or outbound. We have schemas. We have the the source and target data representation. We have the EDI route. We have unit testing. We have all of these pieces that we do up front in the EDI base configuration. And on the right side of the slide, we're talking about a deployment. You can see that the number of objects that we're thinking about have reduced quite a bit. And I'll talk a little bit later about the project generator and how we can make that piece be very fluid for your business and make it easy to move forward in the rollout of additional trading partners. The project generator in our EBI3 application, part of this is, through our years of working through projects like this, we've found that the reusability has been so important to us in what we develop. And once we specify the mapping for an 850, for example, if I'm coming from a legacy system where I know that I have 100 trading partners that I'm already working with on another system, and now I want to get that information into a new application. The project generator, what that allows you to do is it allows you to either take sample data, as you can see in the top left of the slide, sample data, run that through the project generator, and that will grab, for lack of a better term, from the interchange and the GS levels, all of the trading partner specific information and pull that into EBI, allow that to be used on predefined projects, and roll out that specific set of documents for those trading partners. Another one is if you have multiple trading partner profiles, you can do an Excel spreadsheet that has a list of 500 trading partner EDI specific items and run it through the project generator, and specifically decide which reusable objects you want to use, and it will create all of those objects for you. What that does is it cuts out all that upfront development time. What it doesn't do, and I want to make sure that I specify this clearly, is what this does is it will build the objects for you, but it doesn't create any partner-specific mapping changes. So if you look on the right-hand side of this slide, the Customize section, because we're using a base or a reusable object of what we've built previously, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have all of the trading partner-specific changes that would be, for example, in your legacy system. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're doing all of the things that that trading partner needs that you're rolling out to, if it's a new trading partner that you're bringing on. So what we call the testing and the tweaking and the change section of the project generator piece that's all the stuff that happens after these objects are created, and that kind of work doesn't go away. I want to make sure that we're clear on that. So what this allows you to do, rapid onboarding of new trading partners, rapid migration from legacy EDI systems, it really cuts down on the amount of work that has to happen. So for example, if an EDI manager comes to you and says, how soon can you be ready to test with trading partner A? If we have a reusable project that we can use, the reusability of that, you could be ready to test with your base map within minutes. You could have all of those objects sitting there waiting, ready to go. And again, that doesn't mean that you have the partner-specific mapping changes done, but you're that much further along the way, and you can start your testing effort. I'm going to talk a little bit about two case studies that we have, and the first case study will be a project that we started from scratch. It was a JDE implementation. The application integrator for JDE was not available for this project at the time that the project needed to kick off on the customer side. So we ended up doing it from scratch, and we did it based on our previous integrations with JDE. So we have some knowledge on the JDE side, but we didn't have the application integrator, the reusable tools that we could use to make this project more of a rollout rather than a development. So that's the first one. The second case study, I'm going to talk about an implementation where we had the JDE, the application integrator, available. It was a two-phase project, and it has a phase 2, which will throw a little kink in there, that decided to do Edifact instead of X12. So that's something that I'll talk about in a little bit. So the first case study is a distribution and sourcing to food, grocery, cleaning service, healthcare, or any other businesses. This type of customer that I'm dealing with, they do their own back-end ERP on an AS400, but they were implementing one division that was a one-off. So this one division had JDE in-house, and when they brought them on, rather than integrating them to their current AS400 back-end system, they decided to just integrate with their JDE system for this new trading partner. One of the issues that we had with this trading partner was they had a US and a Mexico division. So obviously there were some differences in the data that we're working with, whether it's the units of measure or the currency that we're dealing with. It was a new solution for this division, so we didn't have any other any other legacy system that we were coming from. We were simply just starting a new transaction from our customer to one of their trading partners. They did some of the basic maps. They did an 850. They did an inbound 860 email, which I'll talk about in a second. They did the outbound standard 855 order acknowledgement, 856, 865, and 810s. So one of the key things that we thought about here is when we're dealing with this new project, how are we going to reuse these objects that we build? Now, we've only done this for one trading partner of theirs, but as we build it, we're still thinking in terms of what happens when they get their second trading partner. How easy is it going to be to roll out this 850 that we've done for this trading partner number one to their next trading partner, so on and so forth. So we're constantly thinking about the reusability of the maps, the reusability of the processes, making sure that we're thinking in those terms. The second piece is the business buy-in is critical in this project, and any project for that matter. If we don't have, when we integrate with JDE, for example, Xtol is an application. We have our EBI application that needs to integrate with the JDE backend. So there's some JDE consultants that are on site that are working. If we don't have the corporate buy-in from our customer and the project management or the leadership to keep those two teams on the right path, the project is set up for potential failure in that the project is owned by our customer. And it's important that we have that buy-in from the business side so that everyone's on the same page. That person is leading the project and making sure that all of these pieces are working well together. We didn't have that in this case, and one of the issues that we dealt with was the amount of time that it took to develop the integration to the JDE side, because we didn't have the business answers that we needed, and we couldn't get the answers from that side of things. So that was a critical piece to this project, and I'll talk a little bit more about that on the other project as well. The go live effort on this project, again, we didn't have the buy-in, so there wasn't really the resources on our customer side to support this process in moving forward. We did put in error alerts. We had email alerts that went to corporate IT staff. They had Xtol EBI knowledge, but they didn't have the direction to really focus on this one-off division that just came on board. So eventually what this customer ended up doing is going to our managed services, Xtol managed services, where we actually manage this system for them. We look at their system daily. We make sure that the EBI system is healthy. We check the error alerts. We resolve any errors that come throughout the daily processing. The second case study I'd like to talk about is one that we did use our application integrator for JDE. It made the processing, the actual development of the processes extremely easy, in the sense that we had all of these prepackaged templates for the documents that we were going with. So this was a specialty foods manufacturer that was integrating with a 3PL. So we were doing warehouse transactions, outbound 940, inbound 945. Again, we needed to have the buy-in from the corporate side of things, which we didn't have at first. We eventually got there. This project went really well once we made sure we were all on the same page there. The other piece to this was a European integration with a transportation partner, which throws in the EDIFACT transactions. Now, we didn't have the EDIFACT transactions built into the application integrator for JDE yet, but because we had the base maps, because we had the 940, for example, in X12 format, and that had all of the JDE pieces built into it, it was easy for us to take that transaction, convert the source, because this is an outbound 940, so we were able to convert the source schema or the source data format from X12 to EDIFACT, and then just remap the EDI pieces and have all of the additional J.D. Edwards pre-canned template pieces to that rule set. That was all in there, so it was really, really spectacular to see that piece happen. This customer also is going to do some future non-JDE application data transformation. That was one of the key reasons that they went with the Xtol EBI 3 product. A lot of the pain points for this customer had to do with some manual processing, they had new business that was coming in around actually they actually chose they scrapped their 3PL right at project inception. So we went to a new 3PL. So as we were gathering our information, gathering the trading partner specs, working through how we were going to design all this, they decided to change who their 3PL was going to be, which at that stage of the game it was fine. We were really just in our information gathering piece. So we kind of just shifted gears a little bit. A lot of the information gathering was the same. We just needed different sample specs and things like that. As I mentioned before, we had some lack of clear direction from the corporate side on the project management side of things. But once we realized that, and once we made sure that, each of these players from the JDE side, from the Xtol side, really need to report to a customer-specific project manager or leader to drive that, the project went much more smoothly, both from the U.S. piece of things and also from the European side of things. This customer decided right up front that they didn't want to have the responsibility to manage and maintain and handle all of their Xtol EDI implementations, so they decided to sign on with managed services right off the bat. They were happy that they did that. They can now spend their time focusing on moving forward with new business and not manage and maintain existing EDI relationships. So just to finalize this piece, I want to talk a little bit about just the recommendations. Getting business buy-in on a project plan and the organization, I think, is critical to this type of reusability and any project for that matter. Those type of people need to make sure that they have not only the IT and the EDI background, but the business as well. They need to understand what those business drivers are. They need to have access to people who can make decisions based on the business throughout an EDI project. They need to designate a project owner, and that project owner is accountable for project success. The same way we do it here at Xtol, where the project manager is responsible for the success or failure of a project that we take on with Xtol. That needs to happen on the customer side as well. And to finally align the implementation methods with a reuse strategy. As long as that focus of reusability and the understanding that the reduction in the amount of time and effort that goes along with the reusability of a project, it's critical that that's thought about throughout the entire process. And then once that project comes to a close and you start seeing some of that reusability come into play, it really opens up people's eyes, and they understand how easy it is to move forward with bringing on new trading partners and continuing on the EDI processes. Jim?
Thanks, Ali. And just to sort of recap some of the detailed reuse points that I covered earlier, the three recommendations I have are, first of all, to exploit reuse at the highest possible level. I mentioned that it's possible, of course, to reuse at the object level or the integration level, but the biggest bang for your reuse buck comes when you reuse at the project level, because there are all sorts of best practices that extend beyond individual project configurations. And the main benefit there, of course, is not just reduced errors, but lower project risk and higher quality. Use of pre-built templates when available is another recommendation. Now, this isn't always possible, of course. We mentioned that if templates are not available up front, then one of the first things you do in a project is to build your own. But the nice thing about using pre-built templates is that they incorporate best practices that typically have been proven over multiple projects, and that reduces time and, again, improves quality. And finally, applying automation. Ali mentioned the project generator and the role that it plays in enforcing reuse and speeding implementation, and that, of course, shortens time to value and, again, enforces the quality built into the templates. Now, one other comment I'd like to make that sort of bleeds through all the content that we've covered in this webinar is that the recommendations and the best practices that we've talked about apply whether or not an implementation partner like Extol is involved in the project. We have a number of customers who self-implement. We have customers who completely outsource their implementation to us. And we have combinations in between. Sometimes we have customers who want to run certain aspects of the project on their own, but bring us into a system with other aspects. So, but again, these best practices and project management methods apply regardless of how you do that.
Yeah, Jim, that's a excuse me, that's a great point. When our pre-sales team gets involved in a project and when we're analyzing the project up front, we really do spend a lot of time in analyzing the reusability of the objects that we're going to create. And if we discuss this with the customer in the appropriate way, a lot of our customers will they'll just have us engaged for the first part of it, where we're developing the base maps or the templates or the reusable objects, and then they'll go ahead and they'll go on and take on the ownership after that. And that kind of is it just goes to the fact that our pre-sales team gets that involved with a customer to the point where they're letting them know, hey, we can do this, and then you can pick it up from this point forward. I think it's important to realize that as well.
Great. Okay, so that concludes our prepared material for the webinar.
Great. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing your expertise with us today. So that concludes our webinar. Thanks so much for attending, and have a great day.